The American people deserve to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as it relates to this whole sordid Jeffrey Epstein matter. Democrats didn't put the Jeffrey Epstein thing into the public domain. This was a conspiracy that Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, and these MAGA extremists have been fanning the flames of for the last several years. And now the chickens are coming home to roost. The American people deserve to know the truth. What, if anything, is the Trump administration and the Department of Justice hiding? What are you hiding? If you're not hiding anything, prove that to the American people. And if you are trying to hide something, as many of Donald Trump's MAGA supporters apparently believe, then the Congress should actually work hard to try to uncover the truth for the American people. There are only two things that are possible here. Option one, Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, and the MAGA extremists intentionally lied to the American people for years about the Jeffrey Epstein situation. That's option one. Option two is that, in fact, there's reason for the American people to be concerned as it relates to what information has not been released that could be damaging to the Trump administration and the friends and family of the Trump administration and their billionaire corrupt supporters. And so they're actively engaging in a cover-up. Option one, they lied for years. Option two, they're engaging in a cover-up. At this point, it seems reasonable that can only be one of the two things. And so it's Congress's responsibility in a bipartisan way to ask the questions and try to get answers on behalf of the American people.
Two of your members have introduced or announced legislation to either force or urge the administration to release all the files related to Jeffrey Epstein. Have you had a conversation with those members? Do you plan to? Do you support those pieces of legislation?
I haven't had a conversation with those members or an opportunity to evaluate the resolution and the legislation. However, I think transparency and sunlight for the American people is always the better course of action.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. Donald Trump, when he campaigned, promised on day one he would end inflation and lower costs. Donald Trump lied to the American people because we now know that inflation has continued to increase under his policies and that of Republicans. The most recent inflation report shows that inflation increased to 2.7% above expectations, and core CPI increased to 2.9%. We call on Trump and Republicans to focus on lowering costs instead of things like the big ugly bill that are kicking millions of people off health care. I've also noticed that there has been an uptick in activity around the Epstein files recently. I just want to remind the American people that in February of this year, Attorney General Pam Bondi acknowledged the existence of Jeffrey Epstein's client list. In fact, she said that Jeffrey Epstein's client list is, quote, sitting on my desk right now. Where is that client list? What is Attorney General Pam Bondi hiding? She needs to release the Epstein files as soon as possible. I talked about the Epstein files under the Biden administration. I'm talking about it under the Trump administration. This is a case of the powerful protecting the powerful. We need to have those files released. I also note that the Epstein files that have already been released show that Trump is all over the files. He's in multiple pictures with Jeffrey Epstein. There's multiple videos of Trump with Jeffrey Epstein. There are plane logs of Trump on Epstein's plane. There are statements by Trump about Epstein. There are court pleadings of alleged victims of Epstein naming Trump. So we need to have these Epstein files released. I also want to talk a little bit about Ukraine. The only way we get Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table is to defeat Russian troops on the battlefield. I support President Trump's decision to send Patriot missiles to Ukraine. I support President Trump's decision to say that he's going to backfill Europe's military equipment when Europe sends military equipment to Ukraine. And that is how we're going to get Putin to the negotiating table, by letting Putin know that he cannot win this war. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last night, the Speaker's Rules Committee voted to block my amendment that called for the full release of the Epstein files while protecting the victim's identity. Let's just be clear. They voted to protect rich and powerful men who were abusing, assaulting, and abandoning young women. That's what this vote is about. A nation that chooses impunity for the rich and the powerful at the expense of our children is a nation that has lost its moral purpose. So you ask, why did they vote this way? Let's speak plainly. Because these rich and powerful men donate to the politicians in Washington, D.C., play golf with the elites in Washington, D.C. They are foreign leaders who we don't want to offend. They interact with our intelligence agencies that we don't want to disobey. There is something rotten in Washington. And this is a question of whose side are you on? Are you on the side of the people? Are you on the side of America's children? Or are you on the side of the rich and powerful who've had their thumb on the scales and shafted Americans for decades? We are going to get a vote again this afternoon. And I hope people will find the courage of a Republican like Ralph Norman, or a Republican like Marjorie Taylor Greene, or a Republican like Thomas Massey, or the many, many MAGA Republicans who are demanding the full release of the Epstein files. It's not a question just of Epstein. It's a question of trust in our democracy. It's a question of restoring a government of the people, by the people.
The gentleman's time has
for the
expired.
people.
Just a moment. Does the gentlelady wish to yield any additional
Another
time?
30 seconds.
The gentleman has an additional 30 seconds.
And it's a question of the rebirth of a nation that stands for our children. I hope everyone in this up or down vote will vote to make sure that the Epstein files are released while protecting victims' identity.
He yields back to the gentleman from Georgia. The gentleman from Georgia reserves.
Yes.
The gentlelady from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, if we defeat the previous question, I will offer an amendment to the rule to make in order amendment number 50 to H.R. 3633, offered by Representative Khanna, which requires the Attorney General to preserve and release any records related to Jeffrey Epstein. I applaud my colleagues, Representatives Veazey and Khanna, for their work to release the Epstein files. I strongly support these efforts and the release of the files. Last night at the Rules Committee, Republicans rejected an amendment that would have required the Department of Justice to release the Epstein files, multiple criminal investigations which allegedly documented trafficking of young women and girls by Jeffrey Epstein, a sex offender and financier with whom the president often socialized. For years, the president and those in his orbit, including Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel, alleged that prior administrations had covered up the identities of the rich and powerful people to whom Epstein had trafficked the girls, and the facts surrounding his allegedly suspicious death. They came into office pledging to seek accountability for the horrific crimes by revealing Epstein's client list and other information, but recently backtracked and refused to release any further information. There appear to be only two explanations for this about-face. Either the Epstein files did not contain the explosive information that Trump and his allies claimed during his campaign, or this administration is the one covering up what's in the files. So last night, all of the Republicans on the Rules Committee, except one, voted against releasing the files. Why would they try to prevent the truth about Epstein's abuse and those he enabled from coming out? That's anybody's guess. But with this previous question, the entire Republican conference has the opportunity to correct that mistake. They can vote today to release the Epstein files. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of my amendment into the record, along with any extraneous material, immediately prior to the vote on the previous question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And
the Epstein matter, the president says it's time to move on. What do you say to him?
I think it's time for full transparency and accountability. That's why I offered the amendment the other day in the Appropriations Committee, which was unanimously supported, Democrats and Republicans. We need to get to the bottom of this, and we need to make sure that the Attorney General releases all the documents and answers the questions that we posed in that bipartisan amendment.
What is driving your concern right now?
My concern is that there is understandable public interest in this case, legitimate public interest, and that questions have not been answered, and they deserve to be answered.
Some of your Republican colleagues have told us that their constituents don't care. This is a non-issue for their constituents. What do you think of them saying that?
Well, as far as I can tell, lots of people are concerned. They worry about the fact that the U.S. government may not have provided full disclosure to the American people. And I think everybody has an interest in an open and transparent and accountable government. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I now recognize the ranking member of the ranking member of the committee, Mr. Raskin.
Thank you very much, Chairman Van Drew. Pointing fingers is for losers. I'm quoting our colleague, Representative Chip Roy, from last week. And this has become a mantra for our colleagues in the wake of the devastating flooding in Texas, which cost already 132 lives with still 160 people missing. It's now an article of faith among our colleagues that in the age of climate change disasters like Hurricane Helene, which cost 200 lives in North Carolina, or deadly tornadoes in the Midwest, you name it, in the age of out-of-control gun violence, whether in Uvalde or Buffalo or Charleston or Parkland, we should never engage in finger-pointing or casting blame or attributing responsibility to individuals. Although, of course, Donald Trump finger points and casts blame at Democratic leaders, as he did recently with Governor Newsom with the wildfires in California. But in any event, the point is, we don't really want to know which individuals are responsible. We should be addressing the underlying systemic problems like climate change, effective emergency response and planning, or mass gun violence and reducing access to military-style assault weapons, rather than vilifying people and casting blame on a partisan basis. Fine, let's adopt that rule. Finger-pointing is for losers. For this committee, no to finger-pointing, yes to problem-solving. But this entire hearing is nothing but absurd political finger-pointing. And it's not even finger-pointing at people who actually run our government or occupy public office. It's finger-pointing at not-for-profit groups like Church World Service or HIAS, Lutheran Community Services, and the reviled philanthropist George Soros, who has given away hundreds of millions of dollars to make the world a better place. I don't like everything that every right-wing, not-for-profit group does in America or around the world, but I don't think it merits a full-blown congressional hearing. We didn't even have a hearing on the richest billionaire in the world, Elon Musk, who actually had a government job running Doge, destroying large parts of our government, firing tens of thousands of our federal workers. The Republicans didn't even call in Elon Musk for a hearing or have a hearing about what he was doing, but they want to have a hearing in 2025 about George Soros, all of the old, tired, exhausted, absurd conspiracy theories again. And I don't see any, and these witnesses can correct me if I'm wrong, I perused all their statements. I didn't see a single one of them allege a single crime, anything illegal going on. They just don't like the things that he invests in. They don't like what certain not-for-profit groups do. Well, I don't love everything that the right-wing not-for-profits do. Why are we having a hearing about this? What an absurd waste of time. This hearing, if our motto is going to be finger pointings for losers, this hearing is for losers. Because all it is finger pointing at somebody who doesn't even have political power. This is an oversight hearing before the Oversight Subcommittee that's not doing any oversight on the government. Indeed, the Judiciary Committee has not yet conducted a single oversight meeting, this Congress, with a single government witness. Not one. They've not called Attorney General Bondi. They've not called FBI Director Patel. They haven't even called anybody to talk about George Soros from the government. They won't subject any of their government officials to any cross-examination by this panel. Now, I think this is an absurd waste of our time. Why are we not addressing urgent policy problems like the pervasive nationwide violation of due process and First Amendment rights by ICE and other federal agents who arrive now in unmarked cars, in plain clothes, without badges or arrest warrants, and then snatch people off the streets and send them to a torturer's prison in El Salvador? Do you think the United States House of Representatives Judiciary Committee should have an interest in defending due process? So my colleagues say, you're not for due process for guilty people, are you? Well, yeah, because we don't know if they're guilty until they've gotten due process. That's why due process are the two most beautiful words in the English language. So it separates our rights and our freedoms from arbitrary state power. Why are we not addressing the threats to the security and safety of judges who are working to uphold the rule of law and now are subject not just to slander and defamation and signs all over Congress saying impeach this judge or that judge for standing up for the Constitution? Now, violent threats, not just to them, but to their family members. Why are we not addressing the mass firing of dozens of experienced crime-fighting federal prosecutors at the Department of Justice who've been fired en masse for the sole reason that they did their job and prosecuted police beaters, violent insurrectionists, and other rioters who attacked the Capitol on January 6, 2021 in order to overthrow a presidential election in the United States of America and attack our Constitution? Why are we not having a hearing about that? We could actually have a hearing. Here's something we could agree on, Mr. Chairman, on a bipartisan basis. Why don't we have a hearing on what the whole country's talking about right now? If you turn on TV and go on the internet, why don't we have a hearing about the continuing suppression and cover-up of the information in the Epstein files, about a child sex ring run by powerful people? The whole country, not just Republicans and MAGA, but liberal Democrats are in an uproar because President Trump, Attorney General Bondi, and their allies in the DOJ and FBI repeatedly claimed in public that the Epstein files have the names of power elite actors involved in human trafficking and sexual abuse of minors with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, and they promised to release all the information in the name of maximal transparency. You remember that? They said this would be the most transparent administration in the history of the United States. But now they're shouting nothing to see here, sweeping it all under the rug, steadfastly refusing to release the files despite broad bipartisan demand to release the Epstein files after everything they've said publicly. The Democratic members of this committee sent a letter today at 2 p.m. demanding that the president keep his word and release the files to the American people, and that Chairman Jordan call a bipartisan hearing where we can work together to get to the bottom of this. How about a hearing on that? Do any of my colleagues want to talk about that, or does everybody want to talk about George Soros? I'm curious to know which of my colleagues support our call for a bipartisan hearing on the Epstein files. So here we are at this utterly pointless hearing, spinning absurd, discredited conspiracy theories, again about George Soros. And again, I don't see a single claim of any criminality or illegality taking place. They don't like the guy's politics. I can find you 50 right-wing billionaires whose politics I don't like. So what? What an utter absurd waste of time this is. And it's an attempt to change the subject, obviously, from what America wants to talk about now, which is why, after promising for all of these years to release the Epstein files, will President Trump not release them? And we know they were friends, and we know they hung out, and we know there are all these pictures together. We know that Michael Wolff, Trump's biographer, said he saw photographs of Donald Trump and Epstein with minor-age girls. Well, where does that leave us? That doesn't look good if they then cover up all the information. Come clean and release the information, as the Republicans have repeatedly promised to do. So I look forward to hearing if there's any allegations of criminality or illegality. They should be turned over immediately to the Department of Justice today. Otherwise, this hearing, I'm afraid, Mr. Chairman, is for losers. It's about finger pointing at people who don't have any governmental power at all. It's old, recycled allegations, and we're not advancing the ball on anything. At the very least, the judiciary committee should be demanding that the Epstein files be made public. That is a bipartisan agenda. At least I thought it was. And if something has changed, please let me know. But I thought that we were all for that together, and we should move on that today. Thank you, and I yield back.
Senator, how much are you going to focus on signaling here?
It depends. I'm a little bit further down the dais. Those questions need to be answered and need to be talked about.
Do Democrats need to look into the Epstein matter and the Justice Department's handling of it?
Let me be clear. We have literally been at this for 6 months now. The administration has been doing things that have been so outrageous that the constitutional framers wanted us to check, balance, give oversight. But time and time again, Republicans have done nothing. So whether it's Signalgate, whether it's what's happening at the Justice Department in relation to this matter, or so many things, we are not giving oversight to the executive. And that means we're surrendering our constitutional power, and he is becoming more and more authoritarian in his actions. This legislative branch has got to do its job, and I'm very frustrated that we're not having substantive hearings on matters of urgent need and concern.
Should there be an investigation or hearings into the Epstein matter?
There should have been hearings into the Signalgate issue. There should have been hearings in the Justice Department's handling of these issues. I think there should be a lot of things that we should be doing, from tariff policy all the way to serious breaches of national security.
What do you need to hear from Mike Walls today to sort of assure you that this Signalgate issue is not going to happen again?
There are basic questions that have not been answered. Like, how often were they using Signal, this commercial platform, to discuss classified information? We don't have basic answers to understand what the vulnerabilities here or what the challenges have been in terms of national security threats. Remember, this is the party that had dozens and dozens of hearings about Hillary Clinton's emails. This is the party that manufactured so much outrage over small things, and yet when it comes to this Signalgate, where literally you had a member of the press being included on things with classified information, that we haven't had one hearing. The hypocrisy of this party right now, the Republican Party right now, is outrageous. And Donald Trump is doing things without any oversight, without any check and balance. That is dangerous for our democracy, regardless of what your party is. This is so contrary to our constitutional design and undermines what is every American should demand, which is good governance.
You said he's acting like an authoritarian. Are you saying he's an authoritarian?
When a president attacks the judiciary with such vile language, and we see threats against the judiciary going up, when the president is defying the orders, the direct orders of the Supreme Court, when a president is literally seizing power that belongs to our branch, like spending power and more, these are things that definitely are behaviors that are more authoritarian. These are not normal times in our democracy, and we need to stop normalizing this kind of radical behavior that he's been checked by conservative organizations as well as people in the mainstream, that this president is doing things that, to me, violate the spirit of our Constitution, and I believe violate the law as well.
What about the Ukrainian weapons deal?
To push back?
Thank you, Dr. Onder. I now recognize the ranking member of the whole committee, Mr. Raskin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador DeBaca, is there anything illegal about not-for-profit spending money on a priority that a government agency or department also has? And I'll give you an example. The Gates Foundation has spent $30 billion to advance vaccines, both research and spreading vaccines around the world. USAID spent $3 billion over the last decade on that. Is that either illegal or unusual that you would have a convergence of the not-for-profit philanthropic sector with a governmental priority?
It's not illegal, and in fact, it is a best practice so that you can extend both the governmental and the philanthropic spending.
And presumably we could expect the same thing under R.F. Kennedy Jr., who opposes vaccines, he opposes vaccine research, he wants to stop vaccine programs, and presumably he's going to, all of the same people that he just packed the advisory committee with will be getting grants to go and try to stop vaccine research. And as our colleagues constantly say, that's elections count. Elections matter, and RFK Jr. is in there. So there's not much that can be do about it. We can have a hearing lamenting it and bewailing it. I'd much rather have money going into promoting vaccine research and distribution than opposing it, but that's the difference between our two parties. Is there anything illegal about people in not-for-profits going to work in the federal government in a new administration?
No, sir.
In fact, a great example of that is this guy, Ed Martin, who was for a while the acting U.S. attorney in the District of Columbia. They were forced to withdraw his nomination when it turned out that his close friend is a neo-Nazi who dresses up like Adolf Hitler, and they just switched over to appointing him to a non-confirmable position in the Department of Justice, believe it or not, running the task force on weaponization. But in any event, he ran something called the Patriot Freedom Project, which is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization that supported January 6 defendants and their families, more than 100 criminal defendants, including people who violently assaulted our police officers, wounding them, injuring them, disfiguring them, permanently disabling them. And then he went into the government, and he's had close ties. In fact, he dismissed some of the prosecutions against these people, and they have fired lots of January 6 prosecutors. That looks like a really tight little revolving door channel, and it's not just him. In fact, they hired an actual January 6th insurrectionist who was convicted of crimes to go work for him at that same entity in the Department of Justice. As much as we might hate it, as much as we might think the American people should know about it, that the criminals in this soft-on-crime administration are taking over at the Department of Justice, it's hard to say that there's anything illegal about it, right? So if somebody goes from working at the Gates Foundation or the Open Society Institute at the State Department, is there anything illegal or criminal about that? Is there anything that should cause public alarm in the way these gentlemen are trying to stimulate it?
No, sir.
Well, in fact, is there anything illegal about the government if it's spending funds appropriately, giving to organizations that other people disagree with? I think some of the witnesses were saying the vast majority of the people disagree with it, which of course our colleagues would answer by saying that's what elections are for. In other words, we've elected a particular government. Now I'll give you an example of that. I just looked it up. $434 million has gone in the first Trump administration, and I'm sure more will flow now, to crisis pregnancy centers, okay? Who, from our perspective, lure young people in and give them distorted or tilted information about abortion. And I'm sure that's what they say about Planned Parenthood. Okay, that's politics. People have different perspectives on things. But hundreds of millions, presumably billions of dollars are going to go to the crisis pregnancy centers, which a lot of people think are completely objectionable. Is that illegal because some other people disagree with it?
It is not.
It's not illegal. It's not criminal. This hearing is just weird. It's just people getting up and complaining about things that happen under administration they disagree with when the administration they agree with is doing the exact same thing on a mirror image basis. But there's something that everybody here, at least I used to think, agreed with, which is let's release the Epstein files. That guy is a child sex offender who's convicted of it and then took his life before the larger trial could take place. His associate, Ms. Maxwell's in jail for 20 years. The whole country is saying, release the files. That's what Donald Trump said. That's what J.D. Vance said. That's what the Attorney General said. That's what the FBI director said. And now suddenly they want to sweep the whole thing under the rug. Why don't we have a real hearing with real government officials talking about the government and talking about a real investigation with the real problem, which is the nationwide crisis in the sexual abuse of children and human trafficking? Why don't we do that? I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields. Mr. Goldman is recognized for questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here we are again, La La Land and Homeland Security Committee, conducting oversight of the president and his administration. Great, because there are many, many things that Congress should be conducting oversight over this administration. Donald Trump campaigned on finding convicted criminals who are unlawfully here in this country and deporting them. The worst of the worst, he said. Instead, he and his unidentified masked secret ICE agents are snatching and arresting immigrants from court proceedings, nonviolent, non-criminal immigrants pursuing legal pathways to immigrate to this country, and then illegally detaining them in horrific conditions, and even possibly deporting them despite the fact that they are here legally. You would think the committee with jurisdiction over the Department of Homeland Security would want to conduct oversight over the department's refusal to allow members of Congress to observe the conditions of DHS detention facilities. In fact, there is a specific statute that authorizes both Republicans and Democrats to conduct oversight over facilities that house or detain immigrants. But no, the department refuses. So we're here in the Homeland Security Committee, and I'm sure the Republican majority does not like it when this administration undermines its own authority, its own statutory authority, to conduct oversight. But no, instead of all of that, we are here talking yet again about Joe Biden. Newsflash, Joe Biden is not the president. He hasn't been the president for 7 months. So if we are going to conduct oversight here, why are we doing it about the Biden administration when this administration is literally detaining lawful permanent residents and even some U.S. citizens? And it gets worse. It's not just those masked ICE agents. There are many FBI agents who are being called away from their duties to investigate terrorism, violent gangs, child trafficking, and other crimes in order to help ICE arrest and detain immigrants with legal asylum claims, nonviolent. That makes our homeland less safe, not more safe. So we should hear from FBI Director Kash Patel about how many of his criminal investigators are being taken away from their criminal investigatory jobs, keeping Americans safe in order to help round up non-criminal immigrants trying to immigrate the right way. Some of these detainees are being held in Bureau of Prisons detention centers that are unfit for convicted criminals to stay in. We should hear from Pam Bondi about how much of the department's resources are being used to detain these nonviolent, non-criminal immigration detainees. And while they're here, we can ask them about a very pressing question. What's going on with the Epstein files? Donald Trump promised to release them. Pam Bondi said she had the files on her desk and that she was going to release them in the name of transparency. Kash Patel has spent years railing against the FBI to release the files. Many of my Republican colleagues were banging on the table to release the Epstein files. But now, all of a sudden, after a months-long review, Bondi and Patel say nothing to see here, no evidence that any American would want to see about accomplices, co-conspirators, or other people involved. Yesterday, the Republicans voted against releasing the files. So what's changed? Well, we all know Donald Trump has had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He flew on his plane, he hung out at parties, spoke highly of him. And now there are many people saying that Donald Trump is included in the Epstein files. In fact, there are reporters who say that there are videos of him with topless women. Elon Musk even confirmed that Trump is blocking the release of these files because he's in them. Pam Bondi says there's nothing there, but Donald Trump even acknowledges that there is evidence there. It's just not credible. It's made up. This is a Truth Social post from 9:43 this morning. It is an admission that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, and the American people deserve to know whether he is or not.
Mr. Garbarino,
Mr. Chairman, I would, pursuant to Clause 2K6 of Rule 11.
Gentleman is not recognized. Your time has expired.
I have a motion,
Mr. Garbarino,
Mr. Chairman.
Recognized for questioning.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion.
Thank you, Mr.
The gentleman has a motion.
Pursuant to Clause 2K6 of Rule 11, I move that the committee subpoena Pam Bondi, Attorney General of the United States, and Kash Patel, the Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Mr. Chairman, motion to table.
Gentleman has a motion.
Motion to table.
Motion to table is privileged and non-debatable. We shall ask all those in favor of the motion to table, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion to table is agreed to.
Could I have a recorded vote, please?
Recorded vote is requested. The clerk shall call the roll.
Mr. Green of Tennessee. Mr. McCall. Mr. Higgins.
Aye.
Mr. Higgins votes aye. Mr. Jimenez. Mr. Jimenez votes aye. Mr. Pfluger. Mr. Pfluger votes aye. Mr. Garbarino. Mr. Garbarino votes aye. Ms. Green. Mr. Gonzalez. Mr. Gonzalez votes aye. Mr. Luttrell. Mr. Strong. Mr. Strong votes aye. Mr. Burkeen.
Aye.
Mr. Burkeen votes aye. Mr. Crane. Mr. Crane votes aye. Mr. Ogles. Mr. Ogles votes aye. Mrs. Biggs. Mr. Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Evans votes aye. Mr. McKenzie. Mr. Knott.
Aye.
Mr. Knott votes aye. Ranking Member Thompson. Ranking Member Thompson votes no. Mr. Swalwell. Mr. Swalwell votes no. Mr. Correa. Mr. Tanadar. Mr. Tanadar votes no. Mr. Magaziner. Mr. Goldman.
No.
Mr. Goldman votes no. Mrs. Ramirez.
No.
Mrs. Ramirez votes no. Mr. Kennedy.
No.
Mr. Kennedy votes no. Mrs. McIver.
No.
Mrs. McIver votes no. Ms. Johnson.
No.
Ms. Johnson votes no. Mr. Hernandez.
No.
Mr. Hernandez votes no. Ms. Poe. Ms. Poe votes no. Mr. Carter.
No.
Mr. Carter votes no. Mr. Green of Texas. Mr. Green of Texas votes no.
Am I recorded?
Mr. Correa is not recorded.
Vote no.
Mr. Correa votes no. Chairman Guest is not recorded. Chairman Guest votes aye.
Is any other member not recorded?
Mrs. Biggs votes aye.
As a gentleman.
Mr. Chairman, what are we waiting for?
I'm sorry, sir.
What are we waiting for?
We're waiting for all members to complete voting, sir.
We have all members who've completed votes, Mr. Chairman.
Call the question.
I'm sorry, sir.
We'd like to call the question and have the vote tallied. All members who are present have voted.
Your request is heard and denied. We're waiting for members to return to the chamber to vote.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Ranking Member.
We went through this once, but that's not in the rule.
It's kind of you to have that opinion, Mr. Ranking Member, but I'm the chairman, and we're going to wait till members return for the vote. You guys are pushing a button on these procedural votes. It's not on the agenda. It was not discussed prior to this hearing, and we're going to give all members on both sides ample time to return to the chamber and cast their vote. It's the end of that debate.
Mr. Chairman, for the record,
Perhaps it's not.
the committee didn't even give notice of this hearing. So what are you talking about engaging?
I'm quite certain that the committee is within the parameters of the rules of the House and the committee. Mr. Ranking Member, you've been on the committee longer than most of us have been.
That's why I'm trying to
an
explain the
adult.
rules to you.
So I'm pretty sure you know the rules. We're following the rules.
Which rule are you following, Mr. Chairman?
You're the attorney, sir. You can look up the rules. I can tell you that I have high confidence that this committee, the staff of this committee, is following every rule, and the parameters shall be continued. We will wait for members to return to the chambers. This happens all the time. This is not new. This happens in every committee. When procedural votes are called, members have excused themselves after their questioning to handle our business. They have to return to the chamber. We'll allow that for the Democrats. We'll allow it for the Republicans. That's fair.
Mr. Chairman, we've never asked to wait on a vote.
Well,
We've
did
never
anyone tell you to ask, Mr. Ranking Member? Because that's
it is not the
generally
rules of the
how you
committee.
roll.
It's not the rules of the committee.
Okay, well, you're welcome to have that opinion, but I state again that the committee is operating within the parameters of the rules of the House and the committee. I have the gavel.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Chairman.
I have the gavel, and I have the right to keep the vote open until members have returned from across campus to cast an important vote.
Mr. Chairman.
This is not new. It's historically accurate and traditional in Congress.
That's not true, Mr. Chairman. It's never done in this committee, and other committees have specific rules that allow for the chairman to do this. This committee does not have that rule. We are simply asking if you are doing this pursuant to the rules of the House or the committee, that you simply point us to the rule that allows you to do this, because if you are now ruling as chairman without the authority of the rules, we have a whole different issue.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Point of order,
This committee existed before the gentleman from New York was a member of Congress. I was in the minority back here in 2021, and some of my colleagues did, and the ranking member, who was chairman at that time, repeatedly held votes open when they were not for members to return here to vote. Not because they were for one way or another, but for members to get back on procedural motions. I've experienced it when I was in the member minority. Members were allowed ample time to return from unscheduled votes in this committee. Thank you.
The gentleman yields, and the gentleman is correct.
Gentleman from New York.
Is the ranking member asking to be recognized?
Mr. Coverup, that's not true. When did that happen?
The ranking member is not recognized. Does Ms. McIver wish to be recognized?
No, I'm still talking.
You haven't been recognized.
You recognized me.
Would you like? I did not.
You did.
You want me to recognize you now? You recognize now?
Obviously, I was talking to you already, Mr. Garbarino, because I had been recognized.
Yeah.
But that's not true. That is actually not true what you said.
That is, I don't recall the date, but I recall it happening. I recall votes being held open. So because whether there were other votes or other committees, there was procedural motions. There were also markups where votes were held open or sometimes delayed.
Reclaim my time. Look, all this is just delaying till somebody get here. And Mr. Chairman, the rules are the rules. And for you to try to make them up as you go, that's not how you do it.
You gentlemen yield.
How am I recorded? Mr. Magaziner has not been recorded.
I ask to be recorded as a no.
Mr. Magaziner votes no.
Mr. Chairman, while we wait, can I introduce a UC request?
Gentleman has a unanimous consent request. You recognize?
I would move to introduce a Truth Social post from Donald Trump from 9:43 a.m. Railing against...
Mr. Chairman, we're in the middle of a vote. I don't think you can entertain a UC request.
I'm advised, that, although I'm quite generous with recognizing my colleagues across the aisle here, it's contrary specifically to the rules for you to introduce unanimous consent. Will the gentleman let us close this vote out? We're happy to recognize.
Of course, I'm happy to
Thank you,
reintroduce.
sir.
Mr. Chairman?
Trying to be polite.
Mr. Chairman? Given that there seem to be some attendance issues, at least on the Republican side, I move that the committee do now adjourn.
There's an open vote right now. You're welcome to make a motion to adjourn after we close this
Mr. Chairman,
vote.
point of order. A motion to adjourn is the highest privilege, so it would
I'm not doing an
supersede-
open vote.
It would supersede
Motion
The
to
open
adjourn,
vote.
if you continue with your motion and enter your motion after we've closed this vote, then the chair will entertain that.
But parliamentary
Right
inquiry,
now,
can I make a,
this vote is open, is going to remain open until
Chairman, can I ask a
members
question?
have been allowed to return.
Parliamentary inquiry, my understanding is that a motion to adjourn is the highest privilege and has to be acted on even if there is another open vote. Particularly a vote that's not being
Agreed.
properly closed.
With concurrence, which is reflective of my understanding, I respect Mr. Magaziner's position, and it is privileged, but cannot be entertained during an open vote. And this is an open vote. So if you would like to enter a motion to adjourn, good sir, we will certainly entertain that once we've closed this vote.
Mr. Chairman,
The madam is recognized.
request a tally.
Gentleman is recognized.
Request a tally of the vote as it stands at the moment.
Yeah, the chair will request a tally at conclusion of the vote, when we close the vote.
Green from Texas, Mr. Chairman. May I be recognized?
Of course, my friend from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, my friend. Is it in order to make a motion to close the vote?
I don't believe that a motion to close the vote is in order or required. The chair is keeping the vote open until members from either side of the aisle return to the chamber for this unscheduled procedural vote.
And may I consider this a ruling of the chair?
You can't challenge the ruling of the chair on a motion that's not recognized during an open vote. So if you continue if you would like to submit a motion to adjourn, I would suggest you follow the rules there as well, but you'll have to wait until this vote is closed, good sir.
What I would like to do is, as we have done with other motions, is appeal the ruling of the chair.
You're welcome to appeal the ruling of the chair if it's within the parameters of the rule, but that appeal will not be entertained during an open vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have made a decision by keeping the vote open. That is, in effect, a ruling. And Mr. Green is appealing that decision you've made.
Yeah, we're not going to entertain a motion or an appeal while the vote is open, Mr. Ranking Member. You know that.
Well, I know it, but it's not the rules.
We've always, and ladies and gentlemen, I understand your position. Understand you making a stance in the Homeland Security Committee.
We're just making a stance for you to follow the rules.
Historically and traditionally, this committee and every committee I've served on has kept votes open when you have an unscheduled procedural vote to allow members to return to the chamber to cast a vote.
Mr. Chairman?
This happens if we're in the majority or you're in the majority. It's ideologically, appropriate from either perspective to allow your members to return to the chamber. And it's certainly the historical and traditional means by which we deal with unscheduled procedural votes.
Mr. Chairman?
Who was that, please? Mr. Brashin.
Yeah, point of order or parliamentary inquiry, I would put it to you, but I would put it to the Democrat opposition also, is I would love for someone to point out where the rules say that you, as chairman of a committee, do not have the discretion over this matter. The accusation that the rules are being violated, but yet where is it in the rules that does not give the chairman the allowance of the discretion to make this decision?
Mr. Brashear yields. Mr. Clerk, how is Mr. McKenzie recorded?
Mr. McKenzie has not yet been recorded.
Aye.
Mr. McKenzie votes aye.
Wait on one more.
Mr. Mr. McCall has not been recorded. Mr. McCall votes aye.
Clerk will record a tally.
Mr. Chairman, on that vote, there were 15 ayes and 14 noes.
The motion to table has succeeded, and the chair recognizes Mr. Magaziner for questioning. You have a motion, I'm sorry. Mr. Magaziner, you have a motion?
No, I'll proceed with
The
my...
gentleman withdraws his intention. Mr. Garbarino?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the witnesses for being here. I'm sorry that you're experiencing this.
I'm Mr. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate the opportunity to wave on to the Homeland Security Committee today to speak on an issue that's critically important to my district in Arizona. I represent one of the most diverse districts in the entire country, where more than 64 languages are spoken. And first of all, I want to emphasize how vital and life-saving the work of NGOs like Catholic Charities, like the International Rescue Committee, and like Lutheran Social Services has been to constituents in my district. They work day in and day out with very little resources to serve people. The Trump administration's mass deportation policy has demonstrably failed our nation and our values. According to a recent Gallup poll, a 62% margin of folks disapprove of the Trump administration's ineffective, authoritarian, and inhumane immigration policies. I have seen the cruel policies of this administration firsthand in my district, separating families, masked ICE agents showing up to immigration courts in downtown Phoenix where people had appointments, ripping people away from their families, detainees in inhumane conditions. This includes DACA recipients, this includes green card holders, this includes US citizens, and deporting innocent people without due process to foreign prisons. It is unconscionable. About 1 month ago, I went to the Eloy detention facility about an hour outside of my district in Phoenix. I spoke with more than a dozen women there who were desperate, devastated about the conditions that they're living in, facing significant harassment. They described a situation where one of the staff members literally forced them outside to march outside in 110-degree Arizona heat, marching around for over 2 hours, yelling at them, quote, "This is the price of the American dream." This is disgusting. And when we're talking about well-being of citizens, even if you believe that these people should not be in the United States, it is embarrassing that our country would be treating any human being like that. So, Mr. Howell, I have a couple of questions for you. Very straightforward, yes or no. Do you support this type of treatment of human beings?
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. All the other Democrats haven't asked a question, so I kind of wasn't paying attention. Can you restate it?
Okay. The detention center facility conditions in this country are atrocious. Women are being harassed, they're being dehumanized. In Arizona, they were forced to march outside in 120-degree heat until somebody fainted. I have visited these detention centers as part of my oversight responsibilities. I know you're a big fan of Oversight. Do you think that is acceptable treatment of human beings by the United States of America?
For illegal aliens to be detained throughout their immigration proceedings, yes, I think it's the
that
law.
way. To be treated in
I'm
that
not taking your word for it.
Okay. On top of that, 17 million Americans were just cut off of health care thanks to the vote of all of the Republican colleagues over here. Meanwhile, Republicans just gave more money to ICE and DHS to the tune of $170 billion. It's now one of the largest funded agencies in the world, about 16th or 17th in terms of what a military would look like for other countries. Again, you talked about the importance of oversight, Mr. Howell. Do you believe that members of Congress are legally allowed to conduct oversight of ICE detention facilities?
As we've written extensively the Oversight Project, because we're trying to help keep your colleagues out of jail, like Representative McIver, who was indicted, I misspoke when I said she was arrested, you as an individual member do not have oversight authority. Oversight authority by the rules of the House flows through the full House to the chairman, and that right now is held by the majority. So
It is
despite the
legally
statute
allowed.
that you cite,
Mr.
it's going to
Howell,
end up with more
reclaiming my
Democrats
time.
clogging our
Reclaiming
jails.
my time.
I want to keep you out of jail.
Claiming my time, thank you. It is actually legal for members of Congress to go to detention center facilities that are operated by our government and to conduct oversight. That actually is legally allowed.
That is incorrect.
We also know that the Trump administration is funneling billions and billions of dollars to private for-profit prisons. I heard today a number of $6 billion to NGOs that you all are so concerned about. The private prison companies in this country, like Core Civic and Geo Group, are making billions of dollars in profits because of the massive, and stunning corruption. They gave billions of dollars to elect Donald Trump. Now we're making sure that they make billions of dollars. And speaking of sheer corruption and cover-ups for the ultra-wealthy, Mr. Howe, I know you have spent quite a lot of time talking about the importance of releasing the Epstein files, but now you're kind of parroting Trump talking points about this being a Democratic hoax. I'm wondering if yes
What
or
did I
no,
say?
do you support the
No, what have I parroted
do you support
about it being a hoax?
It's a yes or no. Do you support
No, it's not. You said something false. I'm asking you to cite what you said, which is clearly false, because I've not said what you said.
Mr. Howell, my question is, do you support the public release of the Epstein files?
My answer is written in an op-ed in the Blaze,
yes
which
or
you
no?
can read.
Yes or no?
Listen, ma'am, I am trying to answer
It's
your
a yes or
question.
no,
You are
Mr. Howell.
lying to the American people
I'm asking you a
in your
simple
misstatements. You
question.
just told a lie in this committee
Mr.
room.
Howell,
I'm
do you-
trying to clear up the record.
It's very simple.
I am trying to answer if you let me speak.
Do you
I think the
support it?
public deserves way more transparency than we've got. I've written that. You've accused me of parroting another
It would be
talking point,
wonderful
which
if
I have
you
not.
followed
Bring the
up.
receipts. You're lying, and everybody knows it.
Mr. Howell, I
The
simply
gentleman
asked
will
you a yes or no
suspend.
question.
The gentlelady's time
It's a
has
yes or no question.
the gentlelady's time has expired.
Thank you. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from New Jersey, Ms. McIver, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to start off by just advising that witnesses should definitely come here with the facts. One of the witnesses today stated that I was arrested, and that's a complete lie, and I want to put that on the record. Mr. Chairman, this hearing is a sham, and a complete disgrace. Just because Republicans don't want to see it doesn't mean it's not true. The charities the majority is targeting are doing the Lord's work, quite literally. Republicans are trying to misrepresent and undermine and attack the work of these charities due to assist the most vulnerable and underserved, all while quoting scripture from the Bible. No matter what narrative my colleagues across the aisle try to spin, the truth is that these religious organizations and other nonprofits are not political. They seek to provide aid to those who are fleeing violence and seeking asylum. To every person working at the charities, religious organizations, and other NGOs that are the subject of this hearing, I say this to you: thank you, and I am sorry. Thank you for providing the services and resources that our government has failed to provide to desperate people who are in need. And I am sorry that Republicans are trying to intimidate you and prevent you from carrying out this critical work. I am appalled that this hearing is being used as an attempt to target religious organizations and prevent them from serving their communities in accordance with their faith. Meanwhile, the Republican majority has not done an ounce of oversight of the Trump administration, even as Trump and his administration tear apart DHS. In January, Trump installed unelected billionaire Elon Musk as the leader of Doge and empowered him to derail and demonize critical functions across the government, including at DHS. Elon has long had massive unexplained ties to China. He did not file any kind of financial disclosure, even as he took a role in overhauling the federal government. But did the Republican majority demand any information on Musk's conflicts? Did they ask questions about his ties to the Chinese government, a topic that draws their interest in just about every context every week on this committee? No, they did not. Instead, they turned a blind eye to Doge, and Doge installed unqualified staffers across DHS, gained access to sensitive security systems, and drove off untold members of dedicated civil servants carrying out important missions to secure our homeland. DOJ has been dismantling and reshaping DHS for 6 months now. Has the Republican majority held a single hearing or called a single witness to examine these massive changes to the department? No, they have not. More recently, Elon Musk and Donald Trump had a very messy breakup. Perhaps men are just too fragile and emotional for these jobs. But I digress. We did, in fact, learn a few things during this breakup. On June 6, Musk tweeted, "Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day. DJT." Wow, now that's some inside information. Elon Musk, Donald Trump's right-hand man, who spent hundreds of millions of dollars to help get Trump elected, says the president is tied to the notorious child sex predator. And look what we're talking about today. And indeed, over the past several days, Trump has moved to permanently squash the release of the Epstein files. Now, my Republican colleagues have long expressed a desire to fight human trafficking. Woohoo, talking about it today, but yet scared to call out to ask the administration to release the Epstein files. Surely that must be something we can all get behind. Surely we can all agree that if Elon Musk has evidence that Donald Trump is or has ever been involved in child sex trafficking, then Musk should be compelled to come share his evidence with this committee and the public. Now, I'm sure some of my colleagues may argue that Musk is just blowing smoke, but who's to say? Let's find out. I might have my doubts, but if you think that under oath Musk would admit he does not actually have any evidence to back up his claims, then great, let's find out. Let's do some real work on this committee. With that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes Mr. Ogles from the state of Tennessee for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to enter into the record for unanimous consent.
The gentleman is recognized. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to demand that Donald Trump and our Attorney General come clean to the American people and release the Epstein files. Now, this weekend, Donald Trump said, and I quote, "Let's not waste time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein, somebody that nobody cares about." Well, Mr. President, a lot of people actually care. And we know that MAGA was all in on Jeffrey Epstein. Now, my Republican colleagues have sent letters, they've posted, they've demanded disclosure. Donald Trump Jr., the president's own son, has tweeted dozens of times about this case. FBI Director Kash Patel swore under oath in front of the Senate that he would be transparent with the American public and release the Epstein files. He said, and I want to quote, "Make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened," that he would do that. That was his quote. Now, in February, our Attorney General, Pam Bondi, told Fox News that Epstein's client list was, again, and I quote, "sitting on my desk right now to review," end quote. Now, they claim there was never a list. And this weekend, Donald Trump claimed that the files were written by Obama, Hillary Clinton, and the Biden administration. These are bizarre reversals. And it's obvious to the American public. Someone is lying, and someone is trying to hide something. So let's look at the facts. We know Elon Musk said publicly on June 5th that Donald Trump is mentioned in the Epstein files. We know that Epstein died in a federal prison overseen by Donald Trump's Department of Justice. We know that Jeffrey Epstein in 2008 was given a generous non-prosecution agreement for sex trafficking charges. Now, that agreement let him continue his criminal activities, and that agreement was offered by Alexandra Acosta, who was Donald Trump's chosen Secretary of Labor. That's not all. We know that Donald Trump and Epstein had a long-standing personal relationship. Epstein told one writer, and I quote, "I was Donald Trump's closest friend for 10 years," end quote. Donald Trump told New York Magazine in 2002, and I want to quote this. Quote, this is Donald Trump. "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It's even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do. And many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it. Jeffrey enjoys his social life, unquote. That's disgusting, wrong, and we must inquire more information. The truth is we don't know what the facts are in this case. Now, I can't explain why the Trump administration have changed their minds on Epstein, but their behavior raises questions. This is the time that we must demand answers, and the Oversight Committee is going to do just that. And I yield back.
The gentleman yields back.
Mr. Chairman, the Trump administration's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case is baffling. It's frustrating the American people, and it's exacerbating the mistrust in the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. In February, Attorney General Bondi, 17 days into the job, said in a Fox News interview that the Epstein client list was, quote, sitting on my desk right now to review, end of quote. The White House then staged a major media release of Epstein-related files on February 27th, including preparing binders for conservative influencers and commentators. However, the files released were largely already publicly available. There was nothing new. After intense blowback, Attorney General Bondi went back to Fox News, the mothership, and claimed that a whistleblower, quote, assured her there were more files, and that, quote, New York, Southern District of New York, was sitting on thousands of pages of documents. And she promised on Fox, and I quote, we will get everything, and the country will see, quote, the full Epstein files. These are quotes from Attorney General Bondi voluntarily appearing on Fox News to explain the situation. For the next 4 months, the Department of Justice and the FBI were silent. What happened during that period? Well, we received information that Attorney General Bondi pressured the FBI to assign, now get this, approximately 1,000 agents in its Information Management Division and hundreds of additional agents from the New York field office to work 24-hour shifts to review and produce more documents on Epstein on an arbitrarily short deadline. These officials were told to, quote, flag any records in which President Trump was mentioned. But after this flurry of activity using tens of thousands of personnel hours in March, it took DOJ and FBI 3 additional months to produce no new documents, but rather an unsigned memorandum on July 7th finding that, quote, this systemic review revealed no incriminating client list. Naturally, after all of the public promises Attorney General Bondi has made, the public is really suspicious of her finding. This suspicion has been exacerbated by public reporting that FBI Director Patel and FBI Deputy Director Bongino disagree with Attorney General Bondi's handling of this matter. Public mistrust has been fed by other claims in the July 7th memorandum. This memorandum included links to surveillance video footage from outside Epstein's cell in the hours leading up to his death. The July 7th memorandum describes one of the videos released as full, raw footage, yet experts who've analyzed it concluded the video was likely modified. The Trump administration has essentially created a new controversy rather than solving one. President Trump is not helping matters at all. Despite his administration continuing making promises about the transparency on Jeffrey Epstein and claims about the existence of records that have not been produced, he is currently telling the country the president is saying this is all, quote, a scam, close quote. Yesterday, President Trump posted on his personal social media site, and I quote, my past supporters have bought into this BS hook, line, and sinker. They haven't learned their lesson, and they probably never will. That's from the president's personal social media. This is the president talking about his own constituents who are concerned about claims his own campaign surrogates and administration have continually raised. President Trump and Attorney General Bondi are directly responsible for all this confusion and mistrust, and they need to be fully transparent, and they should release all of the documents for the public to review as quickly as possible.
Senator from Oregon.
Mr. President, Donald Trump has made some far-fetched statements over the last few months, but a stunner in the last few days was his claim that the Jeffrey Epstein matter was a hoax and a scam. Here is why the president is wrong. The figure at the center of this story was an ultra-rich, well-connected sex trafficker. He was a serial rapist of women and young girls. And for some reason, the Trump administration, that claimed they'd be the most transparent administration ever, turned on a dime. The president had run on a campaign with a promise to expose the Epstein files. Now he and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, say, nope, nothing to investigate. When it comes to Epstein and sex trafficking, all these claims are just ludicrous. I want the American people to know that that's wrong. If you want to know why, just look at the latest report from our investigators that was discussed in the New York Times this morning. Now, somewhere in the Treasury Department, Mr. President, locked away in a cabinet drawer, is a big Epstein file that's full of actionable information. Follow the money details about his financing and operations that await investigation. Last year, the Biden administration allowed our investigators to look at portions of the file. We did that at the Treasury building. Here is what it says. Treasury's Epstein file details, Mr. President, 4,725 wire transfers. Let me repeat that. 4,725 wire transfers, adding up to nearly $1.1 billion flowing in and out of just one of Mr. Epstein's bank accounts. If you ask me, that is more than 4,000 potential lines of investigation right there. Hundreds of millions more flowed through other accounts. That's even a lot more to investigate. The file shows that Mr. Epstein used multiple Russian banks, which are now under sanctions, to process payments related to sex trafficking. A lot of the women and girls he targeted came from Russia, Belarus, Turkey, and elsewhere. One shudders to think about the kinds of people who must have been involved in trafficking these women and young girls out of those companies and into the Epstein web of abuse. Again, these are all potential leads, Mr. President, the Department of Justice ought to be digging into. This is about years and years of international sex trafficking. None of this is a hoax. None of it is a scam. And I'd like to say I consider it insulting to the intelligence of the American people for the Trump administration to simply say there is nothing to investigate here. Now, when the Trump administration came in with a lot of fanfare about transparency and openness, I said, I'm going to follow up on that. So I wrote to the Attorney General, Ms. Bondi, Treasury Secretary Bessent, FBI Director Patel, and I asked them all to produce the Epstein file to the Senate Finance Committee so it could be reviewed. In fact, I've made that request multiple times. The Trump commitment to transparency based on the response didn't mean a whole lot because they just refused. Here's what one Treasury official wrote back to me. I'll quote here. The Department of Treasury has previously made documents available relating to the matter in response to your inquiries. Accordingly, we understand that you have the information you seek from the Treasury related to this request. We thank you for your attention to this important issue. Mr. President, for anybody who's familiar with how these discussions go in Washington, D.C., what I just read was code for the bureaucracy saying, you're asking for information, go pound sand. The Trump administration may be trying to close the books on the Epstein sex trafficking, but I want it understood as a senior member of the Senate Finance Committee, where we spend a lot of time looking at where substantial sums of money are going, particularly if they may be promoting wrongdoing and helping to evade taxes. We are going to stay on this fight to hold the wealthy individuals accountable for the harm that they clearly were involved in injuring the young women and others in this sex trafficking. So I'm going to have more follow-up for Attorney General Bondi very quickly. As for today, Mr. President, if she doesn't want to do the investigating, doesn't want the DOJ to do it, let me just restate my original demand. Have that Treasury information given to the Senate Finance Committee and have us on a bipartisan basis do our work. That's what we do in important investigations. If the Trump people believe they need additional authority to carry out the requests that I make again this afternoon, let me offer to help them write the bill myself. The idea that there is nothing more to investigate, not when you have 4,000 wire transfers, many of them associated with the possibility of wrongdoing and sex traffic promoting. The idea that you have that and there's nothing to investigate when it comes to the Epstein sex trafficking operation is ridiculous. Pam Bondi was the Attorney General in the state of Florida, where a lot of the Epstein crimes were committed. The Attorney General ought to know better, of all people. Mr. President, I can't begin to understand the President's handling of this or why he thinks this is just going to go away. But I'm here to say that our investigators have spent 3 full years looking into this. And the reason why is because we feel so strongly about the horror of sex trafficking and our commitment to root it out. The President of the Senate is new to this body, but I'm sure he's dealt with these issues before. You can't have a much bigger horror in front of you than sex trafficking abuse. So we're talking about real evil done to women and girls by Jeffrey Epstein. And Mr. President, nobody gets to sweep that under the rug. I yield the floor.
Speaker Johnson's reportedly considering putting a non-binding resolution on the floor calling for the release of all the files related to Jeffrey Epstein. Would that be satisfactory at this moment, or do you think Democrats at this point need to see something like the Khanna Amendment, which would actually force the release of those documents?
The Khanna Amendment is the most appropriate step that can be taken in order to provide the American people with the transparency they deserve in terms of this whole sordid, scandalous, and corrupt Jeffrey Epstein matter. This is very simple. The American people simply need to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as it relates to this situation. Democrats didn't put this into the public domain. The conspiracy theory provocateur in chief, Donald Trump, is the one along with his extreme MAGA Republican associates who put this whole thing into the public domain for years. And now they are reaping what they have sown.
On that same topic, do you expect all Democrats to be signing on to the discharge petition to release Epstein information?
It's my understanding that the discharge petition may not even ripen until after we return from the August district work period. So let's take one step at a time. And the most important thing that can be done at this moment is for Congress to act in a bipartisan way to demand that the American people get the transparency that they deserve. What is the Trump administration hiding from the American people? That's the question that needs to be answered.
What's in them? What are they hiding? What's the cover-up all about? Just want to put out there what I think New Yorkers are having on their minds right now. If you have any answer to those questions, I'd like to hear from all of you.
Governor, yesterday on MSNBC, you said you were reassuring business leaders that you would step in if in a potential Mayor Bondi administration, if they went a little too far, let's say. You said, quote, "Nothing is going to happen in this city without me being aware of it and involved in it." Why should anybody believe that, given the allegations that Tom Donilon has raised in his lawsuit about what has been allowed to fester in City Hall and NYPD?
Well, I didn't say I'm going to physically be in departments like the NYPD to make sure things like that don't happen, but I can also point to just less than a year ago, being very involved when there were concerns and allegations and a lot of controversy surrounding the administration associated with a lot of people around him who were leaving. And I was very involved in my behind-the-scenes way to ensure that there was a competent team in place, and there was a lot of turnover during that. So that's just one example where I'm not going to go out and do a press release on it, but I will be making sure that people know that I'm very concerned about the 8.3 million people that I also represent as the governor of the state. They're my constituents as well. And I believe that there can be a path forward that is very collaborative when people understand the balance of power, particularly. So that worked well for the incumbent mayor, who may still be the next mayor. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. Who needed assistance with housing, how do you get the city of Yes over the finish line? I put $1 billion in. So I'm just saying there's areas where I'm looking forward to working with whomever the next mayor is to show a different level of collaboration that is probably unprecedented in the state of New York, because there's always historical tension between a governor and a mayor. Sometimes it's worse than others, but you've not seen that with us. I said I was going to chart a new path, govern differently, and so we'll figure it out.
Just to pull the thread a little bit on what you mentioned earlier about the Jeffrey Epstein controversy, is this something that you really do think that Democrats should press forward on nationally, especially going into next year, and also just on the mega bill or mega law, whatever we're supposed to call it now? How's your relationship with President Trump after all of these impacts on New York?
I've been very candid with the president about these impacts in my conversations, yes. I pointed out the impact, $13.5 billion in Medicaid cuts. I mean, I've talked about immigration. The relationship is cordial enough to have a conversation, which I think is what I've wanted to maintain, right? To be able to convey the impacts on his home state. Jeffrey Epstein, is this the driving issue into the 2026 elections? No. We have plenty of other material to work with, such as the big ugly bill. I mean, that is what's going to change people's minds about where they may have voted in the past. When they say, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't know my neighbor was going to get rounded up and doesn't make pizza for me anymore. The pizzeria where he's done it for 20 years. I didn't know that my grandparents in the nursing home are going to see cuts, that they're now going to have to live on my couch instead of in a nursing home because there's not funding. So I think there's going to be so many opportunities, and it's sad to say that because I don't want these things to happen to people because I very much care about these impacts. But to the extent that they are intentional infliction of pain on residents of the state, We will be sure to make sure everyone knows about that. Epstein, I think it just simply points out, trust from the people who have been supportive of the president. I think there's a trust gap there, but that's not something I plan to run on. It's something for all of you to speculate on.
An Impoundment Control Act of 1974 that Congress set up more than half a century ago allows for this process of enacting rescissions of funds to be carried out. This is the same process that has played out in previous Congresses. It's nothing new. Yes, wasteful spending does occur in Washington. The American people know this to be true, and they want to see immediate change. Republicans in the People's House are the ones who are orchestrating that change with the rescissions package and rescissions packages to come. Americans want their tax dollars to be spent prudently and not chucked carelessly at things that do not align with their values and their own fiscal sensibilities. This is not a hard concept to grasp. Republicans understand it quite well, believe me. It's time that we get the rescissions package across the finish line and secure another significant win for the American people. They're looking to us to act. With that, I look forward to today's discussion, and I now yield to the ranking member, Mr. McGovern, for any comments he wishes to make.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And before I go to my opening remarks, I just have a question. I've been following the media reports all day today as we've been awaiting this meeting today. It's been reported that many of the Republicans on the Rules Committee are concerned about the fact that the Jeffrey Epstein issue is not going away. And we had some reporting earlier that from Jake Sherman at Punchbowl that Speaker Mike Johnson and his leadership team were discussing offering an Epstein-related resolution to try to quell the furor of members of the House Rules Committee. Then there's another report that just came out that says that there may be two bills that are being brought before the Rules Committee. One on the rescissions, the rule on the rescissions package, and then a separate rule on Epstein. But we weren't noticed about the second rule, and so I was wondering if the chair could clarify the situation and maybe share with us the language on the Epstein matter. Is it binding? Is it not? Is it? I mean, so I yield to the chair if she could help enlighten us here.
Well, as I often do, I'm concerned about the framing of your question, saying there's a furor among the Rules Committee members.
I'm reading from the press.
From the press.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. As I said, I question the press often for the way the press people characterize things, and I don't know about the furor among the members of the committee. We'll have some time as the meeting goes on for motions, so we'll be dealing with that later.
So, but I guess my request was whether you could share with us the language of, I mean, we're going to offer a motion, and I can tell you right now it's going to be the Kana-Massey bill, but I think, this is an important matter, whether the chair would share with us the language so that we would have some understanding of what we're talking about here today.
Well, we'll look forward to getting your motion, and then we'll respond.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're going to require some time to be able to digest whatever it is, because, and again, in defense of the reporting that there was a furor, I mean, it is 6 o'clock, and we thought we would be meeting early this morning, so clearly there's been some angst amongst Republican members of this committee. But let me
don't flatter yourself too much. There's not a whole lot of angst over here.
Yeah, it's curious that we're meeting at 6 o'clock.
We're looking forward to passing the rescission package. I can tell you that.
Yeah. So let me give my opening statement here, Madam Chair. What am I even supposed to say at this point? The way the Republican leadership is running this place is astonishingly bad. I mean, the incompetence is stunning. Trump said Republicans would pass a crypto rule in the morning yesterday. but instead you didn't pass it until midnight. Republicans held the vote open for 9 hours and 45 minutes, the longest vote in history, nearly 10 hours for what was supposed to be a 5-minute vote. I mean, how many minutes are in 5 minutes? Is that something Republicans are proud of? Holding a vote open for 10 hours so you can buy off the most extreme elements of your conference? And a nearly 10-hour vote is just the tip of the iceberg this week. Committee meetings noticed before you even know what you're meeting about, then postponed because your leadership is in some back room making God knows what secret deals. And another failed rule. How many times have we held Rules Committee hearings only to watch it all crash and burn on the House floor? Six failed rules under Speaker Mike Johnson alone, and 9 since Republicans took the majority. You know how many rules failed when I was chair of this committee? 0. You know how many rules failed under Speaker Nancy Pelosi? Also 0. I mean, this is aggravating to me because you are wasting our time. You guys are getting your whip counts from live floor votes. That's embarrassing. And it's disrespectful to us, to the process, and most of all to the people we represent. There are real crises demanding our attention, and you're wasting time playing petty games and arguing amongst yourselves. Honestly, if you were in the minority and watching this unfold, what would you say? How would you defend this unserious process? And I think we all know the answer. You would say it's embarrassing, and you would call us incompetent. And while we talk about your Recisions package, please spare us the lectures about cutting spending when this majority just added $4 trillion to the debt so you could give bigger tax breaks to billionaires. The big ugly bill you passed cost 450 times what is being saved with these rescissions. You passed your tax breaks for billionaires, and now you're pretending to pay for them. That's all this is. This bill slashes funding for public broadcasting. It guts global health programs. It undermines foreign aid, including to Ukraine. Actually, none of you even know what's fully in this. You know, we've seen the top lines, but even Republican senators are warning we won't understand the consequences until the damage is done. Make no mistake, Madam Chair, democracy is messy, but this is not the give and take of messy democracy. This is a dumpster fire. This is a tug of war between Republican incompetence and Republican extremism. And sadly, no matter which side wins, the American people lose. And finally, earlier this week, Madam Chair, I gave everyone on this committee a chance to go on record about releasing files related to Jeffrey Epstein. It was an up or down, yay or nay vote on a very simple amendment that says the Department of Justice must preserve and release all the files. That's it. And shockingly, all but one of you voted against releasing those files. The Speaker put out a statement, and I gotta love this. He put out a statement calling it an obscure stunt. I didn't realize offering amendments was obscure. I'm pretty sure we do that all the time. And when it comes to a stunt, nothing in my amendment would have prevented your crypto bills from moving forward. My amendment simply said that in addition to the crypto bills, we're also going to have a vote on releasing the Epstein files. And if it was such a stunt, why did Mr. Norman, one of the most conservative members of this committee, vote with us? I commend him for doing what was right, especially as President Trump has suddenly decided that this whole thing is a hoax, that the files don't exist, and that the people who believe this stuff are, quote, weaklings. But I frankly don't get why the rest of you voted no. Why would anyone vote against releasing files that we've been told, by the way, by the President, by your Attorney General, by your Director of the FBI, by his Deputy Director? We have been told by them that these files show the identities of those who knew that Jeffrey Epstein was sexually abusing children. So I hope all of you had a chance to consult your constituents and your conscience, and I hope that you will vote with us when I again offer a simple amendment to release the files. Because either one of two things is true. Either one of two things is true. Either there's nothing here, and Trump made all this up and conned you guys into believing it. In that case, you know, why would you vote against releasing files that don't exist? Or there are files, and you guys want to keep them hidden because you're afraid what's in them. Which is it? Which is it? And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Scott, you're
I would just
recognized.
like to say, I look forward to an honest, not a political debate on the issue of the Epstein files. But when you look at the definition of all the files would include a list of the victims of the Epstein crimes.
Yeah.
And so I look forward to the debate. Now you had your time. You put legislation in.
You can't censor me, Mr.
You
Scott.
put
can't
put
censor
legislation
me.
in at 3:56 when the Rules Committee meets at 4, and we were already in this room when you signed it and put it in. It was a political stunt. That's all it was, and we're going to give you a solution to it.
And if you read the amendment, Mr. Scott, you would realize that there are exceptions to protect the victims of these crimes. And by the way, our language has been out.
No, there are not.
Let's-
There are not.
In the Massey counter bill, there are.
That is not what you offered. That is not what you offered. You said all the files, and we have a responsibility to protect the victims.
Mr.
And we
Scott.
know where you are.
Yeah, we know where you are, Mr.
You're
Heidi.
the party of child victims. That's why you opened the border.
True.
That's why you opened the border. How many
Heidi-
children got raped coming across that border because of what the Democratic Party did?
Who voted to cover up the facts.
Okay. We have a hearing here, and we're going to follow our regular order. Thank you very much. If you, it would be better, Mr. Norman, if we just moved on and we came to you during the questioning. Would you indulge me? Would you indulge me? Thank you, Mr. Norman. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Without objection, any prepared statements our witnesses may have will be included in the record. I now welcome our...
On another subject, I want to speak on the nomination of Emil Bovee, who should not be seriously considered by the Senate for a lifetime appointment to the federal bench. Lifetime. He led this administration's embarrassing efforts to strike a corrupt bargain with New York City Mayor Eric Adams, and he has been trailed by a history of complaints, long predating his affiliation with President Trump, about his temperament, his poor judgment, and lack of candor before the court. Think of it. We're talking about a judge for life. Attorney General Bondi conveniently did not announce her plan to keep the Epstein files hidden until shortly after our opportunity to question Mr. Bovee under oath about his involvement in this issue had passed. Given his role as Principal Deputy Associate Attorney General, it's hard to believe he wasn't involved in the Epstein cover-up. Senator Booker and I sent him follow-up questions to give him a chance to clear this up. Mr. Bovee refused to respond, but that's not the only issue that's grown more pressing in recent days. Erez Ravini, a career Justice Department attorney who defended the first administration's immigration policies, filed a whistleblower complaint with my office ahead of Mr. Bovee's hearing. The complaint recounted that Mr. Bovee suggested Department of Justice might need to say, quote, F you to federal courts that issued orders that the administration opposed. Remarkably, Mr. Bovee couldn't deny delivering this message. He simply said in questions that Senator Schiff and I propounded to him that he did not recall whether he had used that kind of explicit language. So I asked Mr. Ravini whether he could substantiate his claims. In response, Ravini provided text messages, email exchanges, and other documents corroborating his allegations that Mr. Bovee had waxed poetic about violating court orders and spearheaded efforts to defy court orders and mislead federal courts. Mr. Chairman, despite your opening statement, this gentleman, this whistleblower, Mr. Ravini, has volunteered to appear under oath before this committee. We asked you to hold his hearing on this Mr. Bovee until that opportunity was taken, and you decided not to. I think that's a mistake. If you question the veracity of Mr. Ravini, he's ready to stand before you, raise his right hand, take an oath, and testify under oath. What more can you ask about credibility than that? And the Republicans refused to even consider him. His attempts to account for actions have ranged from absurd to nonsensical. This is Mr. Bovee. But one thing is clear. He has repeatedly excused the conduct of those violent January 6 criminals. Mr. Bovee was the ringleader in an effort to punish federal prosecutors for putting January 6 offenders behind bars. I have this memo ordering their termination right here. Understand what we're talking about. You're a member of the Department of Justice staff. You're a prosecuting attorney. You're given an order to proceed with the prosecution of an individual. You do so. You execute it in a professional and legal way. What happened in this case is if it happened to be a January 6th insurrection mobster, you can be dismissed from the Department of Justice under President Trump. Think about what that says about our Department of Justice. Mr. Bovee was the ringleader in an effort to punish these prosecutors. And in his memo, he wrote that the prosecutions of January 6 offenders were, quote, a grave national injustice that's been perpetrated upon the American people. Not the conduct of the mobsters, the conduct of the Department of Justice attorneys who held these insurrectionists responsible for the damage that they did to our Capitol building and the threats to our government. These individuals desecrated our Capitol. Every member of this panel, virtually every member, some are new, every member of this panel who's been here for any period of time will never forget that day as long as they live. I respect this Capitol building as more than just a building. It is a symbol of who in the hell we are. And when these mobsters ran through it, rifled through our desk, posed for pictures, brought in Confederate flags, that was a sad moment in the history of the United States. You would never know it if you listen to Mr. Bovee's recounting of what he believes happened. He has called this a grave national injustice that they would be held accountable for attacking police. Each of you walked into this hearing room today confident that you were safe and secure. And you know why? Because that gentleman sitting in the back of the room is risking his life to make sure that happens. And 100 plus did so on January 6th. Are we to take these policemen for granted? I think that's awful. These individuals, these mobsters, desecrated our Capitol and attacked law enforcement officers who keep us safe to this very moment. To excuse their behavior by claiming that punishing them is a quote, grave injustice is a disgusting insult to law enforcement officials who literally risk their lives to protect members of Congress, staff, and legitimate visitors to this hallowed building. Mr. Bovee further insulted law enforcement by falsely claiming that, quote, heavy-handed tactics by prosecutors are, quote, equally unacceptable as physical violence against police. Think about that. He tried to equalize the prosecution of these individuals for crimes with the commission of these terrible acts on January 6th. I want to emphasize that point. This man believes that those who aggressively punish cop beaters are as bad as the cop beaters themselves. This false equivalence is deeply offensive by a man who wants a lifetime appointment to the second highest court in the land. It shows a ditch-deep flaw in the character and judgment of this nominee. Mr. Bovee also has acknowledged that he provided legal advice on President Trump's disgraceful decision to pardon violent January 6 offenders. His conveniently faulty memory came into play once again when he said he couldn't recall. He couldn't recall whether he assisted President Trump on this issue. Oh, pardons of 1,600 people who've been prosecuted? Full unconditional pardons? Can't remember. Was I part of that? Mr. Bovee lacks the judgment and temperament to sit on the bench. In the words of President Trump, the real reason he's been nominated is because President Trump believes he will, quote, do anything that is necessary to make America great again. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Senator, I'd like to respond to what you said about Epstein, and Senator Blackburn would, and then I'd call on Senator
Mr. Chairman,
North Carolina.
Can I be on the list to speak, Mr. Chairman?
You sure can be, yes. Senator
Mr.
Polk
Chairman,
will be
I'd also like to speak.
to be
recognized. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the gentlelady from North Carolina for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this process sucks. None of what we are doing here today is about governing. We aren't here to improve health care access or to put money back in hardworking people's pockets or to make life better for Americans or, for that matter, anybody in any way. We're here because Republicans want to protect powerful people. They want to protect billionaires, protect those at the top. It's about doing Donald Trump's bidding. Shame on them. Earlier this week, I offered a simple amendment to release the Epstein files that Donald Trump, his AG, his FBI director, and his supporters tell us contain a list of clients of Jeffrey Epstein. Let the American people make up their own mind. But Republicans, they voted it down. Every single one of them. Why? Because Donald Trump, for whatever reason, doesn't want these records to get out anymore. After years of promising America that his administration would release the Epstein files and tapes, Trump is now calling it a hoax. He's calling his own supporters stupid for believing the things he told them. And you're deeming adoption of a bullshit resolution on Epstein that does nothing. Let me be clear. This resolution does not have the force of law. This does not have the force of law. It's political theater. It's a smokescreen for Republicans to hide from doing something that would demand Trump's DOJ release of these files. This is a glorified press release, a talking point to save face, something they can wave around and say, see, we care, so they can walk free of shame while doing absolutely nothing. This non-binding resolution does nothing to get these files released. And get this, when we ask them, when is this non-binding, useless resolution coming to the House floor, the answer was, well, it's up to the majority leader. Look, either Republicans want to actually release the files or they don't. There's no middle ground here. You guys don't get credit for pretending to care. You don't get points for playing PR games while the people who enabled Epstein's abuse go unnamed and unpunished. This is why people hate Congress. This is why they don't trust government. Republicans talk about supporting the victims. They talk about holding powerful people accountable, but it's lip service. When the time comes to do something, they come up with a phony, fake vote to give themselves political cover. Which brings me to this Recisions package, Mr. Speaker. Another disaster. Fiscal irresponsibility masquerading as cuts. The other side just added $4 trillion to the debt with their big, ugly billionaire tax break bill. The big, ugly bill costs 450 times what these rescissions will save. It doesn't even come close. Now, I should mention that these rescissions are also deeply harmful. It cuts funding for international aid that provides life-saving health care. People are going to die because of these cuts. It undermines Ukraine and our allies. It slashes public broadcasting that delivers essential news to communities nationwide. Republicans call it tightening the belt, but it's the same old story. Republicans blow up the budget for billionaires, and then they nickel and dime everyone else to pretend they care about the debt and the deficit. It's nuts. And if we were all being honest here, nobody even truly knows exactly what the hell is in this bill. As Senator Tillis, a Republican, said, and I quote, "I suspect we're going to find out that there are some things that we're going to regret," end quote. Susan Collins, another Republican, said, and I quote, the rescissions package has a big problem. Nobody really knows what program reductions are in it, end quote. You can't make this stuff up. And finally, let's not forget the Trump administration, as we speak, is illegally withholding over $425 billion in congressionally approved funding while Republicans in Congress rush to get these rescissions done, covering for the president once again, afraid to raise an eyebrow to question what he's doing. This is not how this place should work. None of what we've experienced with this majority is normal. This is government by chaos, run by a party that can't count its own votes, can't pass its own rules, and can't stand up to the White House after all their broken promises. This week has been shameful. People are watching, they see what's happening, and they're tired of being sold out, spun, and left behind. I reserve my time.
Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Members are reminded.
We'll now recognize Senator Van Hollen from Maryland.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Ben. It's good to be here with my colleagues to underscore the point that they are making first and foremost, that what we're seeing on the floor this week in the Senate is another round of Republicans willing to cut services that are important to the American people in order to provide tax cuts for very wealthy Americans. That is what drives every action, including public radio stations that can deliver emergency information, including cuts to FEMA. In my state of Maryland, there are several cities that were going to receive FEMA grants to make sure they could protect themselves and their people against this kind of flooding. All of that is frozen. So that is the main theme that we're witnessing from Republicans from the Congress to the White House. There was one little bright spot of bipartisan agreement this week, and it happened in the Appropriations Committee, and that is that Republicans and Democrats unanimously voted to insist that the Trump administration and Attorney General Pam Bondi come clean in the Jeffrey Epstein case. This case is deeply disturbing, from his horrifying abuse of young women and girls to his lenient plea deal back in 2008 to questions about his death in prison. Survivors of his terrible abuse have not had closure. They have not had the full accounting that they deserve. They have not seen the accountability that's needed in this case, which is why I, along with my colleague, Senator Durbin, offered the amendment in the Appropriations Committee markup this week on the bill that provides funding for the Justice Department to require, number one, that the Justice Department retain all the records and files regarding Jeffrey Epstein, that they then provide a report to the United States Congress with the files and answering critical questions that the American people deserve to get answers to, and to make sure that we move forward with full transparency and accountability. Given the fact that that was a unanimous vote, there is no reason Attorney General Bondi should wait one more day to follow that directive, to provide the documents, to provide the files, and to provide the American people with answers to those questions. It was bipartisan. It was unanimous. There's no reason to wait. We need transparency and accountability, and we need it now. Thank you.
Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, you got to love the gentleman from Georgia when he says that he worries about the deficit and the debt. My question is, why the hell did you vote for the big ugly bill that adds $4 trillion to the debt? It makes no sense. At this, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to urge that we defeat the previous question, and I will offer an amendment to the rule to immediately bring up to the House floor H.R. 4405, the Bipartisan Epstein Files Transparency Act introduced by Representatives Khanna and Massey under a closed rule with 1 hour of debate. Mr. Speaker, tonight in the Rules Committee, Democrats offered a motion, several motions, to allow a vote on the floor to actually release the Epstein files, and Republicans on the committee just voted to block it. Time and time again. The only reason it won't be considered on the floor immediately after this rule passes is because of 9 Republicans on the Rules Committee who voted no. Now, with the previous question, I will give the entire Republican conference another chance to vote to release the Epstein files. The only other chance to vote on it this week. And as I just said, the resolution Republicans just voted on in the Rules Committee is a glorified press release. It is non-binding. The Republicans are pretending to do something because they're feeling the heat at home. But it won't even come to the House floor this week, Mr. Speaker. We can't even get a commitment for when it's coming to the floor. The bipartisan bill we are offering, if we defeat the previous question, would actually release the files. It would have the power of law. It would not be a glorified press release. Ask yourself, Mr. Speaker, why would anybody want to stop this bill from getting a vote? What are Republicans so afraid of? Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of my amendment into the record, along with extraneous material, immediately prior to the vote on the previous question. And to discuss that proposal, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from California, the sponsor of the bill, Mr. Khanna.
Without objection, the gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the American people, Republicans, Independents, Democrats, want the Epstein files released with the victim's identity protected. Now, most people don't understand how this town works. So I'm going to try to explain this really simply. Congressman Massey and I introduced a bipartisan bill to release all the Epstein files and to make sure victims were protected. There are 10 Republican co-sponsors of that bill, including MAGA stalwarts like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, including Lauren Boebert, including Tim Burchett. And we have the votes tonight to pass it. But what happened is in the Rules Committee, they don't want to have this vote tonight because they know they're going to lose, because they know their own members want to vote for it. What's even sillier is they had this non-binding resolution. So I thought, surely we would vote on a non-binding resolution. They don't even want to vote on the non-binding resolution in case Donald Trump gets slightly offended. They don't even want the vote on the non-binding resolution tonight. Now, the president is paying attention, not just because his favorite Congressman Thomas Massey is involved. He's paying attention, and he said, okay, let's release. He directs the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, let's release and ask the courts to release the grand jury testimony. Here's the problem. The grand jury testimony is largely about Epstein and Maxwell, not about all the rich and powerful men who abused, assaulted, and abandoned young women. Those people are still being protected. And by the way, the courts usually don't release grand jury testimony. But you know what? The president is hearing the American people. And the president knows that if there's a vote tonight, this body overwhelmingly would vote for the release of the files.
30 seconds.
Additional 30 seconds.
I need 10 seconds. This question is, whose side are you on? Today, the Democrats are on the side of the people. The Democrats are on the side of the children. There are 10 Republicans who are on the side of the people and the children, but the entire Democratic Party is on that side, and the Republicans have chosen to protect the rich and powerful men who've abused our children. It's wrong, and that's the clear difference tonight.
Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Maryland, the distinguished ranking member of the Committee on the Judiciary, Mr. Raskin.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mr. McGovern, for yielding. The American people across the political spectrum are now demanding the release of the complete Epstein file. This is what President Trump and Vice President Vance and the whole Trump team was demanding up until the last couple of weeks when President Trump suddenly decided he wanted to sweep the whole thing under the rug. So there are now two approaches in Congress. We've got a bipartisan binding law which has teeth to compel disclosure of all the relevant material that America wants to see. But on the other hand, the Republicans in the Rules Committee just unveiled a meaningless, hortatory, fig leaf, Swiss cheese resolution that has no teeth at all. It doesn't even have dentures. It's all cavities, what they've offered. So we've got a choice now. We can go with a bill that would actually have teeth for enforcement, or a meaningless hortatory resolution that has all the legal force of National Chrysanthemum Month. Now, the original Massey bill asks for a comprehensive release from the Attorney General. And it's binding, which means if they don't turn it over, we can go to court. It's comprehensive. It includes everything from flight logs and travel records to individuals, including government officials, named or referenced in connection with all of Epstein's criminal activities, all of the entities involved. We want to know about all the immunity deals. And it even tries to deter and account for destruction, deletion, alteration, misplacement, or concealment of documents and records. All of that falls out of this fraudulent resolution they've thrown up at the last minute here. There's nothing in there except for a series of qualifying weasel words which are added to give complete unilateral subjective discretion to the Attorney General. Can I have 30 seconds more? To give complete discretion to the Attorney General to decide what should be in and what should be out. So it starts off by saying, whereas our resolution says all documents, records, and communications, theirs says all credible documents, records, and communications. Well, who's going to decide that? Attorney General Bondi, in conjunction with Donald Trump, who today said that a letter that he wrote to Jeffrey Epstein on his birthday, which is published, which has all of the indicia of credibility, is not credible. That wouldn't be included. Let's release the real Epstein file.
North Carolina reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, that guy voted to add $4 trillion to the debt, too. I now yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New York, the distinguished ranking member of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, Mr. Meeks.
Thank you, Ranking Member
Gentleman
McGovern.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 2 minutes. York, I'm sorry, sir. Gentleman from New York.
Thank you, Ranking Member McGovern. Mr. Speaker, this rescissions package is disastrous. It cuts $8 billion in life-saving and critical U.S. foreign assistance, including food assistance, access to clean water, and life-saving medicine. Let's stop pretending that this is about fiscal responsibility. This package is not about saving money. It's about selling a con yet again to the American people. The president claimed the United States was wastefully sending condoms to Gaza. The fact is that they were sending it to Mozambique to help stop the spread of HIV and AIDS. The president claimed that there was a wasteful $21 million grant to India. The fact is the grant never existed. And it goes on from there. The president claimed that there was a national emergency in Brazil to justify slapping a 50% tariff on a country where the U.S. runs a trade surplus for over a decade. There is no emergency. He shouted about the Epstein files, and now his administration is saying there are no such files. This all, once again, is to service a con to the American people. Let's be clear about what the Republicans are voting to defund today. Programs that help educate women and girls, programs that fight deadly diseases, food, clean water, humanitarian relief for the world's most vulnerable. Are we really going to take these things away from the most vulnerable with it? America's credibility in global leadership must not yield to this con. Let's get to the real waste. The real waste is insinuating 500 metric tons of expired aid sitting in warehouses meant to feed suffering children in Afghanistan and Pakistan. The real fraud is telling the American people that these cuts will help them, and they won't. The real fraud is letting Elon Musk
The gentleman will suspend.
wreak havoc.
Gentleman will suspend. The House is not in order. Gentleman may resume.
The real fraud is letting Elon Musk and his Doge minions wreak havoc on state and USAID after the president fired the independent watchdogs at those agencies. This is not how you run and lead a country. This is how you run a scam on the American people. Let's call this for what it is. It's a con. Republicans claim that they're doing this to save taxpayer money, but as Mr. McGovern says continually, you cut $8 billion in foreign service, and then you add over $3-4 trillion to the American debt. It's a con.
Gentleman from New York yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentlelady from North Carolina. Gentlelady from North Carolina reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
We're prepared to close.
Okay.
All right,
the gentleman's recognized.
I will close, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself the remaining time.
The gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, before I close, let's talk about what's actually in front of us. This rescissions package is a joke. Republicans passed a massive tax giveaway for the rich, one of the most expensive in history. That giveaway was 450 times the size of these rescissions. And every single Republican who spoke tonight voted to add $4 trillion to the debt. Every single one of them. And this isn't even good policy or process. It's rushed. It's sloppy. Even Republicans in the Senate are warning about the consequences. But the House majority doesn't care. They're more interested in headlines than outcomes. And once again, it's everyday people who paid the price. Now, let us end where we started, the Epstein files. Republicans can take a real vote today, a vote that will put them on the side of truth and justice, a vote to tell victims, we hear you, we see you, we will not protect the powerful at your expense. But instead, they are choosing cowardice. They are choosing obedience to Trump. And so they cooked up this non-binding resolution, a press release pretending to do something. So let's be clear. You either vote to release the files or you vote to bury them. And if every Republican votes to block our attempt to release the records, they are telling Epstein's victims, you don't matter as much as our political convenience. And that should disgust every single one of us. This place deserves better. This country deserves better. And the victims, most of all, deserve the truth. Release the Epstein files. Release the Epstein files. Release the files. I yield back.
Gentlemen, yield.
Hey everybody, I just finished my workout. Hope you got your workout in. So I guess we got to talk about Jeffrey Epstein. If you know me, you know I don't like talking about this kind of stuff. You can miss me with most of these conspiracy theories. In this case, it's something that was proven in a court of law that this guy was a monster, that he was a sexual predator who trafficked in underage young women who he abused. He did have an island. He had a co-conspirator who's still alive and who is in prison right now. And he's also somebody who, around the time when he was committing these crimes, described himself as being best friends with our current president, who apparently, according to the Wall Street Journal, wrote a very strange letter and doodle to him for his birthday that was apparently drawn from the FBI files that have not been released. And I understand you want to deny and say that it's not true or that's not real. But, you know, there's really only one way to solve that. If you want to dispute it, there's one really clear way. You can just release it. Just release the files. It's your executive department. Y'all been doing all kinds of other stuff. So, you know, to me, this is pretty straightforward. Just release the files and let's see. But I think this is also part of a broader theme, which is a president and a party that have been consistently breaking their promises to the folks who voted for them in the last election, saying that we're going to cut folks Medicaid and their health care, and then kicking millions off of it without batting an eye. Saying that they're going to be on the side of working people, but raising their costs in this last bill. Also, they can cut taxes for the rich. Now saying all along that you're going to be releasing these files, you're going to try and hold the powerful to account, but we know you're actually on the side of the rich and the powerful, so you're not going to do that. This is the ultimate example of that. And so to me, this is all a part of a broader issue that we have, which is that folks were lied to in the last election. And the good news is we have another one coming up in a year and a half, and we can do something about it. But in the meantime, you should probably release those files.
Hi everyone. Last night we were at the Capitol unexpectedly again until after midnight because, as you guys know, the Republicans love to have these votes in the dead of night so that people hopefully miss all of the shitty things that they're doing. This time they decided to vote to cut funding for PBS and NPR, which are obviously vital sources of news and information and alerts for my constituents and for Americans across the country. They don't want you to have that information. And what they did was vote to cut this funding, billions of dollars, that was already approved by Congress. Really want to talk about the alarming authoritarian nature of how Republicans under the Trump regime are operating in terms of their attacks on the press. They've consistently been attacking the press. We know that Donald Trump is always going after journalists and outlets, calling things fake news, of course. Now they are defunding vital sources of objective, nonpartisan information via NPR and PBS. This is also the same week that Stephen Colbert was fired, or his show is canceled, Late Night with Colbert. Coincidentally, after the parent company settled a massive lawsuit with Trump. This is extremely dangerous when you look at history and authoritarian. I think about this a lot because my parents fled an authoritarian regime decades ago. That's how they ended up in the United States. And it is very much along the lines of what's happened in other countries when a government starts going after the press, and they go after universities, they go after citizens, they go after any sort of civil society, let's say. I had a hearing this week with in the Homeland Security Committee Republicans were going after nonprofit organizations like the International Rescue Committee and Catholic Charities. So just want to call attention to this because this is what authoritarianism looks like. So that happened last night. The other big theme of this week is the massive cover-up of the Epstein files. We know Donald Trump is trying to completely distract from this issue. Suddenly, he obviously called all of his supporters, he called them stupid and weaklings. Says it's crazy that anyone's even still talking about Epstein. So a massive cover-up is underway in that regard. There's a bipartisan resolution in Congress calling for the immediate release of the entire Epstein files and demanding that there be justice for the crimes and there be accountability for the crimes. So, and Republicans we're hearing a lot about how they are, they hate that this is happening, and still only like 9 or 10 have signed on to the resolution. So anyways, another long week, grueling week. Just wanted to keep you guys in the loop of what has been happening here. So we'll keep you posted, and thanks for everything that all of you are doing to fight back and not give in to the authoritarian Trump administration.